We're going to talk about story and identity and how that plays out in our coaching sessions, whether we're coaching an individual or a couple, whether we're doing business coaching or spiritual coaching or any kind of coaching. Usually it comes up. It is usually one of the things a person is kind of looking at. How do other people perceive them? How do they interact with their life in terms of their sense of identity, of lots of times there's a kind of popularized view of, oh, that's just your story, which kind of means like that's just your perspective. It can help someone break through an obstacle. That reframe can definitely help people. Like all of Byron Katie's work. If any of you guys are familiar with that, I have a girlfriend right now. I read the books long ago, but my girlfriend's all about it right now. So like I'm witnessing how much that helps her, because she can look at any interaction and kind of identify, is that a story she's telling herself? But it's not really the other person's perspective. It's not really the truth. And it can kind of break things down so one's less attached to their version of that story. Now, the way I use story is a little different. So, little backstory about me. I was a creative writing major in college. I started writing as a teenager. I never stopped. I have 4 unpublished novels. I write for joy. I write for my own creative interest, and who knows, hopefully one day I will publish novels or short stories or poems. But so far in my life, that's been my private thing. And I love stories. So I studied folklore and storytelling and children's literature, and all that we get from stories growing up. We learn easily through a story. And so I also love personal narratives. And, one of the things that really makes coaching work for me is that I get to hear people's stories, and I get to hear their unique, incredible way of being in the world, the things that happened to them when they were young, what they felt was an identity at one point, how that changed, who were the heroes and who were the villains in their story, what was their evolution, like their hero's journey into growth. I get to be part of that. I get to be part of their story, hopefully, by being their supporter and their witness. So I love stories. And this session we're going to practice today honors a story for an individual, not as a negative. So both the life story, and we'll talk about that before we practice, also the soul or the inner self, the spiritual story of a person. And in the practice we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the coach's story, because that's that's related to all of us here. All of us are coaches or learning to be coaches, whether you identify with that term or not. It's it's a chapter of our life. It's a role, it's an identity we're embodying. And so when we witness that coach's story and give it healthy power through our own exploration about what that means, we're helping each other here in coaching practice. Now, if you're using this with a client, we'll talk more about it later, but that might be different. They're probably not a coach. But they might be going into a profession as a teacher, or they might be entering a new relationship role, or they might want to be empowering a hobby of theirs, any kind of identity. You can replace the coach's story with that new identity that the client is embracing in their life. So that's kind of what's coming forward in our practice today. But now I wanted to take any questions you guys have in your own life, people you're coaching, any of the content you're learning online. In our training, I can't speak to other trainings. So just in our training, Please go ahead and raise your hand. And also Linda is sharing that the session guide is in the Pearl Bootcamp notebook, that you have a link there in the chat and also a link to where you find it in your classroom. And if anyone's here for the first time, we had a few people join the relationship coach training. You're here for the first time, say hello to everybody. This group is a small group of those who want live training. We have a much bigger group of people who want the online, but everyone's invited here every week. So this is my favorite day of the week because I get to be here with you guys in this atmosphere of learning. And I don't know if I'm just not seeing hands go up or there's no hands. Linda can start off with some questions from the morning if no one wants to ask a question yet.
I was going to jump in here and just ask you the question about, our session guides and how they have questions that are suggested, but then particularly in today's session where we time and maybe a coach has to interrupt and redirect.
Sure.
Can you kind of describe where is the benefit in that? Like what is kind of the mindset behind creating something like that?
Well, today's session is even more than usual, more like an interview where it's more helpful to just ask questions to move the story along. And you'll see in the session guide, there'll be like 4 questions for each 10-minute segment. So as a coach, there's different ways we can interrupt or shape a session. Sometimes we tell a story. Sometimes we totally shift gears and we say like, you know what, I just say it. I'm going to shift us over into a new topic now. Like we can be much more blatant than in a normal conversation. Like, this has been great. I have notes on this, but now if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you about this part of your life. We can make a clear transition in a coaching session. We had one student that I loved it. She called them segues. And I had not thought of it that way, but it's a great term. We have segues we can make. In the 10 to 12 minute kind of chunk of the interview about one of the stories, Linda, tell me how that felt when you were observing people. I feel like it's more like you ask a question like let's say, Linda, I said, so tell me about what's like your highest value as a coach. And then you would answer.
Oh, you're asking me to answer.
I want to kind of model the kind of
Yeah. Right. So I would say probably just unconditional acceptance for the other person's experience and holding space for them to share that safely.
That's so beautiful. Was that the way it was for you in the beginning, or did that develop?
I think it definitely developed, yeah. And I think too, like what had to develop was a sense of being able to direct a session versus I think when I first started, it would just kind of go all over the place. So the kind of that balance between like how do you hold that unconditional acceptance for a person's experience and yet also try to hold a container around the intention of a session. So I think that's the place I really had to grow in. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And so we're not going to keep going, but I might now ask Linda a question about that. So I'm taking from what she just said. So I might say, tell me more about how you would describe that container in a session. So you see, I'm picking up on Linda's keywords and I'm asking questions to kind of allow her to fill out her meaning a little more. Then I might go to, is there